Every month, thousands of podcasts are being released. In 2022, the average number of podcasts per month was exceeding 18,000. With each of them being between 1 hour and 3 hours, it's becoming incredibly more difficult to try and keep up with all the good shows out there. Let me try and save you some time and give you a recap of the last 3 episodes of something I recently listened to. Hope you enjoy it. Let's jump into it. Did you listen to the most recent Tim Ferriss Show? Over the last few weeks, he has been releasing an episode that is actually a 1-for-2, so it's a double, and it's not a new interview, but rather a combination of two best episodes from the past. So the one that I recently listened to and really enjoyed was with Hugh Jachman and Esther Perel. So the part with Hugh Jachman was incredibly fun and interesting. They covered a lot of ground. What I like about Tim Ferriss Show is that he usually jumps all over the place, but somehow manages to cover so much. He goes into books, into lifestyle, fitness, beliefs, a lot of interesting stuff. I was very impressed by the habits and the routines that Hugh Jachman has. So first of all, they discussed these 3 books. So they talked about how he recharges his energy, and apparently Hugh actually has been practicing transcendental meditation since the age of 23, twice a day. That's quite impressive. And also before the performances, he usually will also have a very quiet day. And then after performance, he's one of the few actors who goes to bed 45 minutes after. Doesn't do much alcohol, doesn't do much activities. He is trying to not disturb that energetic level and actually bring the best performance to the audience. Another part of the conversation was about his fitness, and when Tim Ferriss asked him what he would take with him to the desert island, he said a rowing machine, and he actually thinks that really all you need is a rowing machine, 7 minutes of that, aim for 2,000 meters, and maybe do some chest workout as well, like push-ups, and that's probably all you need to stay fit. That's an interesting thought. I'll check it out. The most impactful part of the podcast for me was actually about his habits of maintaining relationships with his wife. So that's a very interesting pearl. What he does is every morning they spend 30 minutes reading together. They take turns and then they meditate together. So I think the idea behind is that these are things that often go we often let them go because we get busy, we postpone the meditation, we postpone reading, we may not necessarily have enough time and energy for our loved ones after we give our all to the world, to our jobs, to our hobbies, to our friends. So it's very easy to let these important things slip. My impression is that he actually is a very avid reader, and he doesn't want to miss opportunity to read really good books because life is very short. And that actually brings me to the next podcast part. The second part was Esther Perel. So the second part of the podcast is with Esther Perel, and this was probably recorded before she released her own podcast, and actually as she was about to publish her second book, The State of Affairs. They go a bit into her first book, Mating in Captivity, and covering the challenges with desire in couples in monogamous relationships. And some of the interesting thoughts are mentioned there, such as, marriage is actually makes sense economically, but whether this actually makes sense in modern society, that's up in the air. And of course, we all have different beliefs and value systems, but they grappled a little bit about that. They covered a lot about her interesting life story and how she grew up in Belgium among Holocaust survivors and refugees, and how she was observing the difference between people who lived and celebrated life with eroticism and people who just escaped the death, and how they were covering things with plastic in their home and how they just had a completely different outlook at life. Then they go into discussion of her upcoming book, State of Affairs, and why she decided to write it. And she mentioned that when she toured the world with The Mating in Captivity, a lot of people, or most of the questions from the audience, were coming at exactly about those chapters that covers infidelity. So when desire wanders away, so to say. So she realized that it actually deserves a separate book. She talks about her plan of releasing the podcast. And then they had a really long discussion of various coupleship arrangements possible and options on that and implications on the other partner or partners. So things like polyamory, open relationships and stuff like that. So if you're interested in thoughts of relationship expert on that or how she handled that, that would be a really interesting thing to listen to. And this brings me actually to the next podcast, which is Esther Perel's podcast, Where Do We Begin? Which probably has been around more than a year or a couple of years now. The episode is called The Arc of Love. Let's go. Okay, so in this podcast, she talks about a couple that is going through cross-border relationship. So he lives in US, she lives in Mexico, and twice a month she comes to him. Of course, the identities are disguised, like you don't know their full names, you don't know the identities of the patients. It's a recorded therapy session that is available for you to listen to as if you were present there, which is really cool for somebody who is into psychology and psychotherapy or psychiatrists. This is really a unique opportunity to almost have mentorship with Esther Perel. And she herself, in the previous Tim Ferriss episode, mentioned that she herself is a product of mentorship. So going back to the story, they are a young couple, and what they struggle with is that sense of being appreciated by others, which I think is very common. So she takes them through a discussion and conversation and challenges some of their thoughts, coaches them how to put their thoughts together when they express their requests or concerns, which most of us don't know how to properly put into words that won't offend the other person. It's almost like a reflective way of speaking and a reflective way of responding to the request of the other. And from his end, it sounds like he's working a lot, and when he comes home, he just doesn't have anything left in him, no more energy for her. On her end, she works from home in Mexico. She has an online business, and twice a month she leaves her life, comes to US, stays with him. So she basically kind of goes into a lot of rearrangements to make this work. Both of them have a lot of sacrifices because he wants to provide, he also wants to give her citizenship and is working on that. She wants to be with him, and when she is in US, she doesn't do anything else socially. So then Estelle comes to this very insightful observation that they really don't have much fun outside of their own relationship. They almost live in a bubble of each other, which I think leads to some food for thought for both of them. So I guess what I was left with is, how do I make sure that in the end of the day, when I come from work, I still leave some energy and some funness in myself for my partner? I think we all can do better. The other thing that she brought them to is the end of the episode finishes with both of them expressing appreciation of each other's contribution to the relationship. And that brings to this sort of emotional warming up. I could hear that both of them were crying. It was a very emotional moment. Probably something opened up in their hearts at that time. Another thing that I wanted to take with me from this episode and something to think about is how to not be each other's everything, right? Often times, maybe not all the couples, but definitely some of my friends and my couple also, we kind of close off on each other. We really don't have much outside social activities other than with each other. So then it becomes much more difficult for the other partner to have life outside of the relationships. Or if I put it in a different way, when one partner is unavailable, then the other's world kind of collapses. One more very interesting point that Esther Perel made in between these two episodes was that oftentimes we feel like our partner is our property. Our partner belongs to us, but that's an illusion. They are on a loan with an option to renew. All right, so final episode. Okay, this girl won't let me record unless I pay attention to her. I think she believes I'm her support animal. So the final episode is Jay Shetty's show On Purpose with a neurosurgeon who's also a neuroscientist on his book, This Is Why You Dream. So I really like that they covered sleep and dreams. It is one of my biggest interests in well-being because the importance of sleep is so tremendous on our health and mental well-being. So I love how they started with saying that, you know, a third of your life is spent in sleeping, and it is almost like a HIIT workout for the brain. I love that they call it this way. And then that sleep is like a nocturnal therapist. So really encouraging people to make sure they get enough sleep. They discussed a little bit about various types of sleep someone might have. And then they covered something really interesting, something called the sleep exit. And the author of the book described his routine of when he's waking up. He's trying not to move much, don't disturb any energy, take his phone, open the notes app, and instead of going on the social media, actually write down the thoughts and the ideas or dreams, anything that comes to mind in those first 2 to 12 minutes upon awakening, because you're still in that transitionary state. I think this is a very interesting thing to try and practice, especially if you're trying to access your creativity. They covered also a little bit of lucid dreaming, mild technique, drugs, things like that. They discussed the meaning of the dreams and that there is currently a lot of work being done in this direction and trying to interpret or understand the value or meanings of different types of dreams. So for example, they talked how most people had nightmares in their life and how children are 5 times more likely to get those, and most of them will outgrow it. They touched on image rehearsal therapy, so you can actually rescript the ending of your nightmare, and this actually works, so you can look this up. Dr. Jandial saw a lot of patients in the end of their life, right? He's a brain surgeon, treated lots of cancer patients, and he observed that a lot of people will have those dreams of reconciliation. And when Jay asked him what would be the thing that he wished for humanity or for most people in the world, he said that he wished we got those reconciliation dreams earlier in life so that we don't regret, having to deal with it when maybe we're not at our best physical capacity. The other interesting thing was about which dreams we should pay attention to. And although we all have dreams that may represent our daytime anxiety, such as if you're worried about giving a presentation, you might have a dream that you are naked in front of public or something like that. He said that actually the most impactful or interesting dreams to reflect upon or pay attention to would be those that are very emotionally intense and kind of linger into the next day. Some of those dreams that you're kind of woken up disturbed and kind of linger in your mind still. Oh, you're one to go. So those might be dreams that you want to take note, maybe write it down and think for yourself what that might mean to you. I will follow this advice and we'll see where it takes me. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it either saved you time or actually inspired you to go and check out those podcasts and listen to the full episode. In any case, thank you so much for tuning in and see you in next video.